Hi, my name is Jesso, and this is Alex, and this is the first episode of PS 122 TV. This is also the first episode of our interview series, where we will be interviewing artists and luminaries regarding issues, ideas, debates coursing through contemporary society.
So today we're going to be talking to artist Hampton, who has two pieces coming up in PS 122's spring season. The Quiet Volume and Q China. They're running April 29th through May 5th, and they're co-presented by Pen World Voices Festival and supported by the British Council. Both pieces take place in a library, and they're self-generating or auto teatro performances.
Today we're going to speak mainly on Q China and the concept behind it, which is loosely based on victims of globalization. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the sources and materials and conversations that you had to inspire the piece.
So, Q China was initially a commission from Stefan Kegi of Rimini Protocol for a festival that he was putting together in Poland, in Poznan. The title of this festival was Asian Influences, and we'd been speaking for a while about wanting to do something about the phenomenon of how everything around us now, everything that we look at in terms of technology, of course, but also clothing, pretty much everything that we're touching all the time has been made either in China or in some offshored factory where the labor has been offshored. And we were just, I guess, talking a lot about how fascinating it is the way that, we don't know as consumers, we don't really know anybody who works in those factories. I mean, most of us, we've never met anybody. Despite being surrounded by documentaries and constantly reading about the world, actually, we have a very thin and insubstantial idea of who these people are. And of course, they're all very different people, like we all are, totally different. Mm-hmm. But there's never really any chance to kind of connect in any meaningful way. And I wanted to make a piece that in some way brought them in, conjured their presence and tried to do that in a live way. But then also using the tools of communication that they are building. So, for example, the Mac laptop, Skype, just as we're using now, to try and flip that power back on itself. So then I started thinking about making a piece which is about communication with a factory worker, and where during the course of this communication, your face and his face mixes to form this strange composite, slightly sort of monster ghost-like. And that could be a strange and funny thing for both sides. The material that gave was kind of interesting. I recorded the screen, so much the same way that you're recording the screen now. Yep. I was able to record that and then edit it up and feed it into this machine. So it's explained to the audience that what you're watching is the result of these actual conversations that I had with the workers, edited up and placed within this fiction, which is basically that your computer's running slow, you order some extra RAM, you take the computer apart for the first time, a little bit worried about how to do that. You put this thing in, follow the instructions. It's all very easy, actually. You put it back together, your computer, you restart, and then there's just this face of somebody with his hands over his face, and there's no explanation. And bit by bit, you figure out that actually, well, to begin with, you don't know what's happening at all. You think it's maybe a virus or something. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that this guy has figured out a way to get into your computer through this little upgrade that you've given yourself. That's the fantasy. And then the idea, in essence, is to get beyond just the stories of victimhood. Because however well-meaning these stories are in newspapers that we read about victims of globalization, what they give you is the information, they give you the problem, and yet you really don't know anything more about that person afterwards, other than they are a victim. And I think that the two things that are most often denied victims in these kinds of stories are any sense that they are curious people, that they might have a sense of curiosity like us, or specifically that they don't have a sense of humor. Or, I mean, it's the last thing that anybody's going to start talking about in a story about victims, is whether or not they have a sense of humor. But when you understand that they do, then they suddenly become like real people. And suddenly their situation seems very different, I feel. So the conversation was a lot about allowing him to be able to laugh. And in fact, when I told him what I wanted to do with his image and this whole idea, actually he was laughing quite a lot. And it was very nice, because then I explained to him that, directly after him laughing, I was saying, I will probably use this images of you laughing or thinking or just sitting back and sketching, all this stuff can assist the fiction in various different ways.
Have you ever considered doing this show as a website or an app, or is there something kind of inherently live or theatrical about it?
That's really important, that it's a live thing. Still, I mean, it's just like all my stuff recently, what we call autoteatro, is the idea is to start with something which is automatic, basically, which is unpeopled, which is playing with ideas of absence. So whenever you see the other person, it's an image of yourself as a computer user, as a consumer, mixing with this image of the maker.
Given the way communications have rapidly developed over the past 10 years, where do you see communications going over the next 10 years, and on what devices will we be communicating?
Exactly what kind of devices? I mean, I'm very interested in all that, and I'm reading up a lot at the moment about, I don't know, for example, the Google Glass and all the ethical problems around that. But I do think that liveness, what we know as liveness and what we're so involved with as live artists and so on, I think that this is going to become a really big deal, because I think that in a way what we're working with is sort of the final frontier, as in it's the last. I mean, it's very funny how over the course of the last century, to work with liveness became sort of minority art form, or a minority entertainment form, whereas only just before it was really like the only form, apart from painting maybe, and I mean otherwise there was no recordings, and yet I think over the years it's sort of increased in capital in a way, and now people really desire that, to go to a live gig, to be around other people, and that there's a different response to it. And yet I think technology is getting to the point where we're really that close to the point where liveness is actually going to be possible to record, where conjuring presence it will be another thing that's just taken for granted as possible to do, in the same way that we're doing it right now. Like at the moment it's flat, that I'm not really there, but I think pretty soon it will be all around us, and there's signs of that in many different areas already, but I think that the line between actually being somewhere and beaming yourself in with whatever means will not be so distinct. And I think that will have of course massive repercussions in terms of art and theatre and performance, but before that far greater changes to do with how the world is and how we are in it. I mean, I think it'll mean much more to our everyday, really, before we get to that.
So I understand the piece could actually travel without you, the auto part of Auto Teatro. But are you actually planning on being in New York with the piece?
Yeah, it
Have you
does.
done that?
I mean, actually, Q China is a little bit of a complex setup, and I still do that. So I'm still traveling with that. It's a much newer piece. And it's still being adapted and changed a little bit as it goes. The quiet volume is already traveling without us, and we do remote setups and that kind of thing. Yeah, but I've got 6 or 7 different shows that work like this now, and they're all very different. Like some of them, I really still have to be there, and others, it's possible to send, which is great.
That's a really cool concept. that you could have several shows running around the world simultaneously is really an amazing idea. Well, thank you.
Great. I can't wait to be there. I'll see you guys soon.
I think that
See
wraps
you
it up.
soon.
Thank you, Ant. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.